Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Parenting and Mental Health webinar series. I'm Dr. Amanda Court. I am, I guess, your host. And we're going to talk about parenting and mental health. So a few things I want to go over before we get started too far into it. Please make sure you're muted unless you're speaking. As much as possible. We love to see you. So I'd love to see you on screen if possible. We are going to have questions and answers at the end. So if you would like to wait until then to ask questions, that would be great. Otherwise, apologies. Otherwise, we will, you can ask during if that makes more sense. Okay, so parenting and mental health. We're going to go through some slides. I have some data that I'd like to share, excuse me, with you all. And then we will hopefully have a great discussion. I'm going to wait a few more minutes to let a few more people come in, and we'll go from there. Welcome, everyone, to Parenting and Mental Health. And today we're just going to do some introductory stuff. I'm Dr. Amanda Court. I'm going to be walking you through, we're going to talk about some statistics, some facts around parenting and mental health and the connection between the two. And then we will open it up for discussion. Questions are welcome. We have plenty of time at the end to do that. And if you have questions during, of course, go ahead and raise your hand. Please make sure that you mute your microphone during the session, just so that everyone's able to hear the presentation. So welcome. This is being presented by Bay Community Health, and we will have a series of these throughout the summer on our Wellness Wednesdays around parenting and mental health for the summer, and then possibly changing the topic a little bit depending on interest thereout. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. So parenting and mental health. I already introduced myself, so we're not going to go through that again, but Amanda Court, Dr. Court, Dr. Amanda, hey you, they all work. Welcome to the session. Couple ground rules to start. Want to make sure that you all are aware, while we're in this session, this is an inclusive environment and it's a safe environment. So please, we want to use inclusive language. We want to use supportive language. We're all here to help each other. So we want to make sure that if we have a question, we assume noble intent. And, if you disagree with something that someone else has to say, you can bring it up with me later. If something, we want to make sure that we make everyone feel welcome to share herein, that we're all here to support each other. Also, this is kind of it's part psychoeducation and part support group, right? We're here to support each other. So usually during those support groups, we kind of keep it confidential who's part of the group. Not that it is anything we want to tell people about this, and please share if you think this is worthwhile, more people to join. But we just want to make sure that we keep the confidentiality of the people that are coming into the room and what they're talking about. So let's get into it. So one of the things I wanted to share, I have some statistics that you may or may not be aware of. And I pulled a lot of these from Centers for Disease Control, National Institutes of Health, places like that, census that pull this type of data every year. One interesting fact is that 1 in 5 youth age 16 to 17 have experienced some sort of mental health disorder. And this is just those that are diagnosed, right? So that's 1 in 5. That's pretty good chance that we know people that know youth that are dealing with some sort of mental health challenge. Some other statistics, 1 in 14, that's children, so that's under 12, have been diagnosed with a mental health challenge. If we want to put this into perspective in terms of numbers, 5.8 million children, kids under 12 years old, have been diagnosed with some form of anxiety. And 36.7% have reported having persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness in the past year. And these were statistics reported from approximately 2020 to 2022. So there is a little bit of the pandemic effect there. However, we have not seen the numbers shift that much in 2022 as we would have expected. If you want to look at it a different way, we have it broken down by different mental health challenges, depression and anxiety. You can see that definitely as children get a little bit older, for the most part, our depression and anxiety increases. Behavior disorders, not surprisingly for those of you that have kids somewhere in the under 12 range, tend to have higher instances of behavior disorders. A lot of times, and we can go into more details about that, people have questions, a lot of times that's due to children not having the language they need to really articulate what's going on. They know they're frustrated, they know they're angry, they just don't know how to talk about it. So it ends up coming out in some sort of behavior issue and can become really persistent and tough. So that's some of the stuff that we're challenged with. Well, how do you know if your child's doing okay? So I wanted to give you this because sometimes we as parents get nervous that our kids might be anxious, might be depressed, maybe they're having a few bad days and we're not sure when we really need to be concerned. Well, let's look at when we think our kids are doing okay. So if your child is, and I broke it down by different age groups, if child between 3 and 5, you're looking for a kid that is affectionate, right? Shows appropriate love and comfort to those that are part of their trusted circle. They're resilient. We all know what that means. That just means, maybe they fall down, they scrape their knee, it hurts, but they get up and they try whatever they were doing again if that's appropriate, right? They're positive. Certainly kids at this age can have just infectious positivity. The world is still butterflies and rainbows for a lot of these kids. And if they have that, that's a good thing. And it can become a really positive, or it can become a really effective coping mechanism as they get older if they're able to keep this. And curiosity. Curiosity is one that transcends all the youth age groups. Having that desire to want to know how things work, the way things are, asking questions. We want to encourage that. That allows kids to feel like they're included. It also allows them to feel, gives them a chance to learn and to grow. So we see that throughout. 6 to 11 years, you're seeing persistence again, and that also is persistent throughout. And then self-control comes into play in 6 to 11 and 12 to 17. And for some of you, you may have heard of a study about marshmallows. A long time ago, there was scientists that gave kids, put them in a room, put a marshmallow on the table and said, if you wait a certain amount of time, I think it was 3 minutes, and you don't eat this marshmallow, I'll give you 2 marshmallows. And then they studied these kids throughout life. They found that kids that had better self-control were tended to be more successful throughout life. They had a solid profession, seemed to be doing well both professionally and personally. So if your kid does eat the marshmallow, no need for concern. But if they have that ability to control themselves, both maybe emotionally, but also in other ways, that's a good sign. So we want to look for these are good signs that our children are doing well. So some correlations in parenting and mental health. So with parents, the more anxiety, depression, health issues we have, addiction, overt anger, things like that, the greater that is in us, and then the decrease a child will have in confidence, academic performance, physical and mental health. So even though we might be struggling with anxiety and depression, the more we can do to better ourselves, to get ourselves healthy, it's not being selfish. It's actually helping our kids too. So something I want to talk about today was parenting style. So something that's really important and also kind of correlated to children's well-being is the type of way that we parent. We often tend to parent the way our parents did, or if it was an extreme parenting style that our parents had, we might go the opposite direction. But often we kind of adopt something that we grew up with because that's comfortable, it's what we know. So I thought it would be interesting. We're going to spend a little bit of time in these first few sessions getting to know ourselves as parents first, so that we then can better apply what we learn and the tools and the techniques that we learn through the lens of knowing how we parent and how that would impact our children. So there are a few different types of parenting styles. The first one's called authoritative. Um, it sounds harsh. It basically means that if you're an authoritative parent, you're setting really clear boundaries. Okay, you have clear rules in your household. You have clear, maybe punishments for not following the rules, maybe rewards for doing something that garners a reward, and everything is well spelled out. Also, part of this is just like when a child first learns how to ride a bike or to play a sport or to play an instrument, right? You explain it to them first. So these rules and boundaries also are well explained in an authoritative parenting style. Even though it sounds tough, an authoritative parent is nurturing. So nurturing might mean something different to different people, but it basically means that the authoritative parent isn't just very tough and kind of a drill sergeant. They are also, they openly show love and compassion for their children, right? They listen, and they hear what their child has to say, and also can explain maybe why what they did was the wrong thing, the right thing, phrases appropriately, things like that. The permissive parenting style is exactly the way it sounds. So this parent is often very loving, very compassionate, warm, affectionate, maybe doesn't have as strong boundaries as someone from an authoritative parenting style. So this person, the child won't have as clear boundaries, won't necessarily know the behavior they do, whether it's appropriate or not. And that might be because a lot of times these parents, they might call themselves laid back, or, they go with the flow. All wonderful. I know a lot of people like that. With children, especially when they're younger, sometimes that can feel unsafe because they don't know if they're doing the right thing or not. As they get older, this the children have developed their own sense of what's right and wrong, and so it becomes a little bit easier. But when they're really young, permissive styles can tend to have children that end up developing some rebellion, could even feel aimless, not necessarily sure when they're doing the right or the wrong thing. So that's going to impact their confidence level and their self-control. So while it's nice to be able to be permissive sometimes, and remember, all of these are sliding scales, we all might have a little bit. I certainly know there are nights where I'm a permissive parent, right? Go play your video game. I've had a night. It's okay. It's what you do consistently, right? So for my kids, that would be considered a treat, and they know that. So it's what we do most of the time. Uninvolved parent. So this goes from the permissive parent who's around, just doesn't set clear boundaries, to the uninvolved parent who often isn't around. Okay. So this might be a parent that's juggling multiple jobs, or, single parents. And there's, it could be a lot of different reasons. It might be because the parent has to travel for work, or whatever the case may be, but the parent is not around often, and when they aren't necessarily responsive to the kids. So hearing a child say, well, I tried to talk about something I'm interested in to my mom or my dad, but they didn't hear me, or they were doing something else while they were listening. The first thing that came to mind is like an old sitcom dad with like a pipe, and he's got his newspaper up, and the kid's trying to talk to them, and then he just keeps the newspaper up, keeps smoking away, and isn't really listening to his child, right? Um, so when that happens, you can imagine not being heard is really going to affect confidence, self-esteem, and they're going to seek attention wherever they can get it. So sometimes that attention seeking can become inappropriate and be found in places, and maybe seek role models that might not really be good role models. Okay. So like I said before, it's all on a sliding scale, right? We have, and here you have the authoritative versus the authoritarian. So the authoritarian takes it another step up, right? That's really someone who just drill sergeant tells people what to do, not very affectionate, right? So you can see the demanding, but also cold and unaccepting. So that's overboard. That also is going to impact children negatively because they will probably feel like nothing they do is good enough. I've certainly heard that in my office from time to time from people that have had authoritarian parents. Authoritative, you're demanding, you set clear boundaries. However, you are also warm and accepting, right? You have that unconditional love for the child. You go down below, you have the permissive, right? Warm and accepting, which is wonderful, but undemanding, not challenging the child, not setting up boundaries. And then you have the neglectful, which is the one we were talking about before, the uninvolved parent that is not responsive to the child, so cold and unaccepting, and also doesn't demand anything of the child, basically because they're not around, they're not paying attention to the child. So what does this mean? So what I would like to do is give everyone an opportunity. Give everyone an opportunity to try this quiz themselves. Hoping I can see if I can put this in the chat. Oh, I love this question. How old is really young? That's a really good question. How old is really young? So we're mostly dealing with probably, I'm guessing that this was back to when we were talking about kids that don't feel safe when we don't have clear boundaries. That goes all the way back to infant, right? So, maybe not infant, maybe toddler, I should say toddler, right? So toddlers are starting to explore their boundaries. And there you have to give the kids rules, right? You're teaching them how to walk, what not to throw, right? The constant game of a toddler throwing things off of their high chair or something, right? They think it's a game. You're slowly but surely in a affectionate way trying to teach them boundaries. Rules like don't pull the dog's ear, that's a bad idea. Things like that. So when that happens, we probably say as early as toddler, really, is where boundaries can start to be set. As far as love and affection, moment the child's born. So that's what really young could mean. I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't, by all means, please chime in. Okay, so we have a parenting style quiz. Give me a second to see if I can bring this up. Ah. I'm going to put this in the chat and just to see if we can get it to work properly. I will stop sharing my screen for a second while we all do that. Oh, great. I guess I already had it in there. Okay, so if you can, it works. Wonderful. So I want to make sure that works. So something that I would like to do next is I would love to talk about parenting styles with everyone as you find out your parenting style that can help us guide things that are going on with your child, maybe kind of exploring how authoritarian you are, authoritative you are versus permissive. I think the last time I took the test, I was authoritative, but also democratic. So it's good to find out uh, what we are, and then I would love to talk about it. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording for a second, just to give people a chance to take the quiz, and then we'll set up breakout groups.